Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Marc Medley Show. As always, it is a pleasure to come to you and share with you once again. And this episode is an interesting episode, as they all are. But this one deals with, I guess it could be somewhat sort of a pet peeve, if you will. And I'm just kind of wondering to see, am I the only one with this particular pet peeve? I don't think, based on what I've observed when I'm in the various stores, that I'm the only one. But that's what I'm kind of trying to find out in this particular episode. If by chance you don't know who you're listening to, this is the host of the podcast, Marc Medley, hence the Marc Medley Show. And what I'm looking to find out today is, am I the only one who is not in support of, or who really does not like, self-scan checkout? That's my topic for today, is this whole notion of scanning your own items when you go to a store. For me personally, I would much rather, and I prefer, and I do, go stand in the line at the checkout counter and have the person working the cash register, or the cashier, or whatever you want to call the person, check my items out. I am not a fan of the self-scan unless I have one item. If I only have one item and I can look down the store at the two aisles that are open and I see baskets full of folks, then yes, I will take my one item to the self-check. But when I have multiple items in a basket, I do not want nor like to go to the self-checkout. Now, this is my problem with self-checkout, because I can remember a day when a very famous store whose first letter begins with W, when the store first arrived, as a matter of fact, it wasn't even in the north. It was in the southern, and I guess you can call them like maybe Midwestern states in the beginning. It hadn't really got to the northeast. But I can remember going to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and spending time there on Memorial Day weekend with friends. And the biggest treat was going to this particular store. And I remember vividly that if a cash register line would hit so many people, or a certain number, every associate in the store would now be called off the floor to come and open a register. Every associate, wherever they were in the store, the manager of the store would get on the PA system and would call all the associates and open up all the registers. There was a certain number. I don't know what the number was because I never worked for the store. But there was a certain number that kind of like, once the manager saw that, the few registers open hit those numbers, the rest of the registers would now have to be open. The same thing would happen when I went to Virginia. When I would visit relatives in Virginia, that was the treat, to go to this particular store that begins with a W. That was like a field trip to go to this particular store. And again, I would see the same phenomenon there, in terms of when cash registers would begin to pile up, or the lines started getting long, all the associates were called off of the floor. In other words, all the associates were cross-trained. They all knew how to work the cash register. But nowadays, when you go to this same particular chain, you have maybe one, well, of course there's one, maybe two, shall I say, registers open. And the line can be around the store, and no associates are called, nor do they act to come and open up another register. The expectation is that you're going to take a basket full of items, a basket full of goods, and go to the self-scan line and go through that whole process of scanning out your items yourself. Again, for me personally, I'm not a fan of that. Now, I know for some, and trust me when I tell you, I'm technologically savvy. So working the scanner in and of itself is not the issue for me. I know how to work it. I know how to place the barcode up against the little light, and it'll, check out your price for you. It'll ring up your receipt or what have you. I get putting your debit card in and all that kind of. But for me, just the thought of the customer experience. And you would think that the checkout would, because for me, that is the make or break in terms for me of customer experience. Think about this for a minute. You've gone around a store, you've pushed the cart around the store, all around the store, finding your items, walking up and down all around, putting your items in the cart. Now you have to come to a self-scan, and you have to go through all the jockeying and the juggling of trying to get everything out of the basket and into a bag yourself. Now, mind you, because these self-scan machines are in place, that means, one, the store is saving money because they have to hire less people. Now, I think they're saving money. I'm not sure, because it seems like the same amount of people are there. They're just standing around looking. You have folks that are just kind of like in the various parts of the store standing around trying to look busy, trying to look like they're hanging items up or putting items on the shelf. And don't get me wrong, there are folks who really are working. But again, remember, experience when the store first came around was, even if you were hanging clothes or stocking shelves, you were pulled off to go complete the customer experience, because the chain did not want folks getting frustrated and disgruntled by having to stand in a long line. So even if you were stacking the shelves, even if you were hanging clothes, you still stopped that and you went to the checkout counter, opened up a cash register, and you served the customers, compared with a bunch of folks standing around, particularly over even at the self-check. Because think about this for a minute. You're at the self-check machine and somebody's just standing there in the event you don't know what you're doing or you get stuck. That same person could be on a cash register. That could be another register that is open, compared with somebody just standing there watching. Go back to my experience, as I said, of all associates being called off of the floor, opening up registers, compared with now standing at a self-scan in the event that the person does not know what he or she is doing or something goes wrong. To me, that seems like, and I could be wrong, that's why I'm putting this particular episode out. To me, that seems like a waste of human capital. Seems like that human capital could be doing something more productive, such as opening up a cash register. You go in these stores, they'll have 14, 15, 16, 20 lanes, and 1 or 2 will be lit, and 3 or 4 standing next to the self-scanner, and another however many standing around the store, as I said, trying to look busy. And for those who are not standing around trying to look busy, those who are actually stocking shelves and those who are actually hanging clothes. It's a very frustrating experience when one would think that stores would do the best they can to make the checkout experience the best experience, to make that particular experience the customer experience as they're finishing their purchases and they're trying to get out of the store so they can go home, get to their car, what have you, but ultimately becomes the most frustrating part of the task of shopping. That's why I'm to the point now where I, for the most part, shop online, because I can't be aggravated with going around the store and then coming to have to self-check myself, to check my own items out. I would rather order and then have it arrive for me in the next day or two, then not to mention going back and forth to stores and they don't have the item that I'm looking for. Then I have to go leave this store and go to that store. It's just as simple for me as to go online, see what I want, order it, it comes the next day or two, because online shopping really is getting this delivery thing down pat. So for me, I'm to the point now, I'd rather do the online. But when I do go to the store, I still would rather have a person checking my items out compared with me having to do it myself. Now, let's say, for example, I just told you, the thinking is, okay, well, if everybody's self-scanning, that you don't need cashiers. If that's the case, then seems to me that cost would be passed on to the customer. Okay, if I have to, and I had this conversation with my sister the other day, if I have to now check myself out, I should get paid to do that. And what I mean by pay is a discount. Okay, you know what? If you go into the self-scan line, we're going to knock off 10% of your order, 15% of your order, whatever. But since you chose to now use the self-checkout, we're going to knock off X percentage off your offer. Because see, the stores are getting it both ways now. They're having it both ways. They're having me do the work myself while they save on an employee that normally would do that work at a cash register. So if I had to use the self-checkout, it would be nice to say, okay, Mr. Medley, since you chose the self-serve option, we're going to knock off a percentage off your total bill, whether it be 10%, 6%, 15%, whatever. We're going to knock that off because you actually did the work. You did the work that normally the cashier or the associate would do. That would make a little bit of sense to me. But just this constant blatant disregard for the customer experience to me, it's not as if customers don't have choices. And as these stores continue to move to this self-serve, self-scan, folks are going to go to stores, one, who serve them and have cashiers, or two, they're just going to do all their ordering online. It's kind of like the same thing with these conversant systems where you cannot get to a human being when you call these companies. You have to go through the menu with a little annoying voice, and if the menu has changed, please listen carefully, and if you don't know your person's extension, please dial 3, and if you want this, the conversant system, that's what it's called. That's the actual name of the system. It's called conversant, and oddly enough, ironically enough, you do not converse with a human. You're conversing with the machine, punching all the numbers. For this, press 1. For this, press 2. For that, press 3. Please stay on the line. Your call is important to us. We're just getting further and further away from the customer experience. And the expectation is that customer is still going to spend his or her money with you. Because that's the expectation of these CEOs. That's the expectation of these companies. They're doing all these cost-saving measures. These cost-saving measures usually amount to you doing more of the work of you having to spend your money for whatever product you're buying out of their store that you did all the work in. Now, some of you will follow that, and if you didn't, you'll get it a little bit later. In the meantime, companies are making the profits, CEOs are making all these profits, and you're doing all the work and spending your money. Same thing with the conversant system. Online for hours trying to get through to companies because they don't have the folks on the customer service end, or is being outsourced. You talk to somebody in a whole different country to service a product that you purchased here in the United States. I don't know, maybe this is just me ranting about something that I don't think I'm the only one that feel this way. So if you're listening to this podcast and you feel this way, I don't know, as I put it on the various social media sites, feel free to say, yes, Mark, I feel that way too. Yes, Mr. Medley, I feel that way too. Yes, Marc Medley, I feel that way too. Feel free, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, whatever it's on, feel free to go into the comments section and say, or YouTube, because it's usually on YouTube. Go into the comments section and say, I could not agree with you more. These stores are not doing anything to make the customer experience enjoyable. They're not doing anything to leave an impression that says, we value your dollars and we want you to come back, other than hanging a little sign that says that. But the sign says one thing and you having to self-scan is another. Now, I get self-scanning for quickness. For those that say, I don't want to stand on line. But again, for some, if you're standing on the self-serve line, on the self-scan line with a long basket, the line is just as long and may even be longer because the person most likely doesn't know what he or she is doing. For me, like I said, if I have one item I've picked up in the store, okay, I'll go ahead and scan it. I'll, bite the bullet. I'll suck it up. I'll go ahead and do it. But if I have a basket full of items, I am not standing at the self-scanner. Agree or disagree, I get it. That's not the point, but I am just sharing. You can reach out to me, or you can check me out on my website, because that's the portal for everything, marcamedley.com, marcamedley.com. Check me out there. There's a contact form. You can hit me up there. There's an 800 number you can call. If you don't get me, just leave a message. I get a lot of folks calling the 800 number and won't leave a message. So if you call the 800 number, leave a message, and I will get back to you. Or you can, like I said, hit me up in the contact sheet, in the form. Let me know, or since this is posted on all the social media sites, by all means, let me know yay or nay whether you're a fan of the self-scan or not.